So welcome everybody to this week's report out. I'm sure we may have one or two others joining us, but in the spirit of our process, we will make a start. So we've got some great presentations to hear about this time. The usual process will allow colleagues to give us their presentations, and then we'll have a Q&A at the end. So if we could start with Helen, please. Welcome, and could we go straight to you on the tissue viability work you've been doing?
Yeah. Hi, good afternoon. My name's Helen. I'm a Band 7 on General Intensive Care at the LGI. As the lead nurse for tissue viability on my unit, I wanted to focus my Leeds Improvement Method training on reducing Category 2 pressure sores on General Intensive Care. Next slide, please. As I'm sure you're all aware, pressure sores are a result of prolonged pressure on the skin and primarily affect patients who are confined to bed, have restricted movement and are unable to express pain or discomfort. On intensive care, this covers the majority of our patients. Pressure sores are painful and inconvenient for patients, and they can even lead to increased mortality. To the trust, they're costly and time consuming and can reduce our patients' experience greatly. Next slide, please. Pressure area care is something that we pride ourselves on in critical care. However, during COVID-19 pandemic, the number of pressure sores reported on our patients did greatly increase. Our patients were spending long periods of time in prone position to aid their ventilation, making it difficult to assess pressure areas as effectively. We also had the challenge of reduced staffing, along with an increased number of patients on our units. As the graph shows there, Category 2 pressure sores peaked at 6 in November. That's it. Thank you. Category 2 pressure sores peaked at 6 in November 2020, and although the numbers did fall quite quickly, it was proving difficult to maintain that baseline of 0 to 1 pressure sore each month. As COVID started to subside and the ICU team was rebuilding, it became evident that we'd lost a lot of experience in our nursing staff, and that was proving difficult. Next slide, please. I commenced my Leeds Improvement Method training in November 2022 after a month of 3 Category 2 pressure sores. So my aim was to try and reduce the number of Category 2 pressure sores and above that were occurring on L6 and L7 General Intensive Care. And I wanted to do this by rebuilding our tissue viability team to help with the education and to reduce the number of sores. So during the LIM course, I learned new ways of gathering data and information, including PDSA cycles, spaghetti diagrams, process mapping, to name just a few. I felt that the PDSA cycle would be the most appropriate tool for me to use with my improvement project. I wanted to recruit new tissue viability link nurses and champions to the team, a mixture of registered nurses and band 2s and 3s. I wanted to train them and empower them to educate the rest of our ICU team. It's quite a large team that we have. I already had the data available regarding our Category 2 pressure sores from Datexes, and I was aware that our pressure sore prevention training compliance was quite low, partly due to the number of new starters that we'd had. A lot of international recruits had come to work with us on intensive care after the pandemic. So that was something that we needed to focus on in improving our education. As the new tissue viability team was brought together, we discussed what was required, and together we created standard work. We made sure to allow time for meetings, both within our CSU and the tissue collaborative meetings, which is a multi-CSU collaboration, where we get to see what other areas are doing and what they're doing well, and try and bring that back to our own area. We also ensured time to create a bi-monthly newsletter to update the rest of our team members on all things tissue viability. Next slide, please. Thank you. We used Datex and the results from our monthly Category 2 assurance meetings to record our outcomes. This graph shows you that initially we had a reduction in pressure sores. December we only had 1, January 0, February 2, and March back down to 0. only 3 category 2 pressure ulcers within 4 months was a great start, and I was really pleased with that. Next slide, please. What I think went well, we had a new and enthusiastic tissue viability team. Focus was good. Tissue viability was high on the agenda, and our new team wanted to conduct their training quickly in order to reduce patient harms and improve patient experience. And we did see a reduction in those first few months. Next slide, please. What I would do differently, or things for me to look at really, is that I think I need to be more realistic. I was really disappointed in February when we had 2 category 2 pressure sores, but actually it takes a long time for learning to be embedded, and for the whole team to get on board, especially with such a large intensive care team. I also need to acknowledge myself and allow for normal variation. There's always going to be a bit of variation. We can't always have a perfect score, although we would very much like that. And also, I need to be more aware of mental valleys, which is something that I learned about during the training. I worked on my Leeds Improvement Method project in my own time, as I didn't want to be taken away from my clinical obligations. However, this isn't really sustainable to continue in this way. My improvement project impacts the whole team, the whole ICU team, because it improves our patient experience. So it's important for me to take the necessary management time that I need to make this sustainable, and I think this is a big mental valley that I need to overcome. Sharing my leader standard work with my matron might help with this as well. I felt as well as a band 7 that I felt like I have to take on the whole responsibility of the team, when actually delegating the work out to the junior members of the team is good for their development and their learning, and it empowers them to succeed in their roles and to teach the rest of the team. But I do think it's important to look at the improvement that we did make. We only had 3 pressure ulcers in those 4 months, and the next steps for me and for the rest of the team are to move towards sustaining this improvement and reducing pressure sores to 0 if possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Helen, for that. Thank you, and some great reflections as well. I'm sure there'll be questions at the end of the 3 talks. So lovely. Thank you for that. So can we come to Pam? Hi, I can see you on
Hello.
there, Pam. Welcome.
Yeah,
hi.
hello.
Over to you.
Okay, hi, thanks. So I'm Pam Dunn. I'm the Central Specimen Reception Service Transformation Manager in Pathology. We're located across both the LGI and the St James's site, receive over 10,000 samples every day from inpatients, outpatients, and throughout the sort of general practice area that we serve as well. We have around 60 staff who work over a 24-hour sort of shift pattern to book in and prepare the samples for analysis by the biomedical scientists. So we have quite a critical role in providing good quality results. So next slide, please. So currently, the blood sciences analytical work stream is working slightly differently. They have a slightly reduced capacity at night. So some of the workload now needs to be centrifuged separately to separate the fluid component of the blood from the blood cells, and this is so that we can preserve the samples for analysis the following morning. It's quite time consuming for the reception team to do this, and it's an extra step in the process that really usually when we're using the robotic system to do it gives us an extra time pressure really. So next slide, please. So what we did was mapped out the workflow for both routine running and for the sort of more manual running of loading and unloading centrifuges manually, and discussed ways with the team that we could smooth the workflow and tried to identify where the issues sort of lay really to actually speed this process up. And we looked especially at the capacity that we had with the manual centrifuging, because the robotic system built into the analyzers actually handles a lot of samples very quickly, and obviously we don't actually have to get involved in that process as that's happening. So next slide, please. So just to give an example of the difference in the work stream, this is the routine running when the track and the robotic centrifugation is happening, and it's just this sort of 5-step process. And if we can move to the next slide, we can compare that with the contingency running that we're doing in the evening at the moment and overnight, where the sort of less acute work is centrifuged offline and stored in the fridge for analysis the next morning. So it is a much longer process, and as I said, we've got issues with the number of centrifuges available. So next slide please. And this just shows you the sort of capacity of the centrifuges. So when we're running on the track, the robotic system can do around 960 samples an hour, centrifuge those down and make those safe. Without the track running, the manual centrifuges, they're firstly distributed throughout the department, and you can see that in this picture here, the sort of slightly convoluted pathway that someone's having to sort of walk up and down to get samples in and out of a centrifuge, as well as the other centrifuges scattered around the department. Overall, we've got much smaller capacity to centrifuge samples manually as well, so only around 440 samples an hour. And that's when someone's actually sort of loading and unloading centrifuges all the time and running around doing that, and that obviously is not very good for people's sort of feelings about work, because it is quite a race and quite a challenge. So next slide please. So we sort of identified that the simplest sort of solution for this was actually to obtain a large centrifuge. There are centrifuges available that will centrifuge about 150 samples at once. So that cuts down the loading and unload time, and also, we can locate that into one of the main work areas to just reduce the sort of staff input and reduce the stress on the staff as well. So we've made a successful business case for that, and I'm assured the centrifuge is now awaiting sort of procurement. So we will collect data after it's arrived to identify the improvements, but I know it's already sort of improved the morale in the team, sort of knowing that it's on its way. So that's been a really positive outcome. So next slide please. So that's really what went well. We were able to make a strong case for the purchase because we had the data there. It's not a massively expensive piece of equipment, and actually we were probably spending more than the cost of the centrifuge over time in staff time. So quite a good case to make. Next slide please. So there are quite a few different small processes that would benefit from that streamlining over time. Really useful to get the input from the whole team at an early stage, and I think that the LIM tools have really helped us to do that. What we're starting to try and do now is to upskill the whole team to take on these projects, because where there are people working in the area, day by day, they can see where these work streams can be improved. So that's really what we're aiming to do differently in future, and we've started that sort of upskilling. We've got 1 or 2 people have already done the foundation day for the Leeds improvement method, and we're looking at ways we can cascade that training, as well as encouraging other people to take up that opportunity. So thank you.
Thanks Pam, that's really great. Good to hear that piece of work, and of course really timely given the lovely picture of the old medical school there and the impending move into the new building. Great to be thinking about processes and people feeling empowered to kind of look at them and change them. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
So we'll move on then to Fiona, if we may.
Good
Hi
afternoon.
Fiona. Hi.
Hi. Hello, my name is Fiona, and I'm on the NHS Graduate Management Training Scheme, specialising in health informatics, which I'm fairly sure is the longest job title in the trust. So I work across multiple different teams. So my improvement project is a little bit different. I've sort of got examples from different projects that I've been working on, because I don't have anything quite as nice and neat and lovely as the 2 presentations we've already heard. So I work across occupational health, the diabetes specialist midwifery team, and the information and insight team in DIT. Next slide, thank you. So the problems that we've got. So in occupational health, there was a discussion around was the current IT system fit for purpose? In the I&I team, there is a process that they do called non-sus processing, and non-sus is non-secondary uses service data. So that's data for things like patient transport, which doesn't go to the secondary uses service for the NHS, but it does still need to be collected, and in some cases we need to receive funding for it. But the process of doing it was pretty horrible. Lots of people say that they didn't want to do it. There's another problem in I&I, which was the live bed state report, which I know some of you will know is coming out. Hopefully the first go live is on Monday. And as part of that, the idea is to display the available beds across the trust, the number of people in A&E that need to be seen and where they need to go. And it needs to update around every 15 minutes. But there was a query around the process of closing and opening a ward. What does that mean on the DIT side? And how long does that currently take, and what are the improvements there? And then finally, I had produced a lot of data analytics work for the specialist midwifery, diabetes midwifery team. I'd produced some Excel dashboards, but I'm leaving. My placement here at LTHT finishes at the end of August, and I didn't want to just drop everything that I'd done and leave it static. So what was I going to do with that and to make it future-proof? So next slide, please, Kirsty. So what did I do? Well, the first thing was I started leader standard work, and I took this sand, pebbles, rocks metaphor, because as you might understand from the number of projects I've got going on, it was really difficult to know what to prioritise. How was I spending my time? If I don't go to this meeting, what falls down? And this really revolutionised how I work, and made a massive, massive difference in my ability to handle everything. So that was the first step. After that, so in terms of what I did that I learned from the LIM methodology, so in occupational health, I conducted direct observations and process mapped several issues that people kind of were surfacing when I was doing the direct observations. I also did stakeholder analysis, which was a technique I learned to try and map, okay, who needs to just be told and who needs to be directly engaged. Something I didn't do, so down the bottom, out on the outside of the little coloured boxes, are the things I didn't do and probably would have liked to. So I didn't get to do any time observations. And I think because I couldn't do that, wasn't able to do that, actually identifying metrics has been quite difficult. So that's something that I think I would have liked to have done. I also wasn't able to implement a huddle board. There is an existing huddle board in occupational health, and it was felt that we don't need more meetings about the IT project as well. But I was able to join in and keep people up to date. And plan do PDSA cycles. I think they're going to be really useful when we actually implement the new system, but in terms of I just haven't been able to use them yet. In the non-sus processing, again, I did process map. Was able this time to do some times observations. So instead of watching somebody do their work, instead I set up a spreadsheet for people to record all the different steps and what times these happen, because this process is something that lasts over days, occasionally a week, and so I couldn't really sit on somebody's shoulder for that time, but that was also really useful because then I could give them a column to record what the data quality errors were, how many we got from different service areas, and so we're going to have something really useful to use as a metric. And then finally, this mistake proofing that came through from the methodology, it was really useful to think about, okay, how are we going to make this improvement? And visual controls and technology in particular, we already have sort of standard work and inspections at the end of collecting the data, but setting up a spreadsheet that means that people can't put an NHS number that's longer than 10 characters or fewer than 10 characters, and putting up some alerts to say, have you double checked this? Is it definitely for this month? I think will be really, really useful. In terms of ward movements, again, there was a process map, and being able to, so those pink stickers that you can see coming off the map are the waste identified, Tim Woods, which was really, really useful to get people on board. I would have really liked to do some time observations, some spaghetti and this kind of thing, but unfortunately ward movements don't happen very often anymore. I think everyone's glad of that, but that does mean that I haven't been able to sit down and watch one happen, which is a shame. And then finally, in the data analysis, so I did some direct observations of how they're currently using my Excel spreadsheets and how they're currently doing analytics work to support their QI work. And as part of that, I built the same reports I had done already, but I built them in Power BI, so they're much more future-proof and they can add more data to them, and that will automatically update. And then more importantly, not just producing the reports, I produced a lot of training videos of how they could then make these reports themselves, how they could utilize Excel better than they were currently. And so what have the outcomes of all these actions been? Mostly watch this space, unfortunately. Kirsty, if I could have the next slide. Thank you. So I would have loved to stick around for my 3 months and come back and report on everything that had happened, but unfortunately my placement is due to end, so I needed to come and finish off this presentation. The outcome of the occupational health work was that we have this really great list of system requirements and the decision to go out to procure a new system. Non-sus and ward movements coming soon. And data analysis, there are a couple of comments that people made, some feedback, which was really good. I have not done anything to make that 6% reduction in errors, but what I have done is help them be able to identify that reduction in errors with how to analyse the data. So leader standard work, as I said, really helped. Process maps made a massive, and direct observation made a massive difference in engaging people. You can see there I kind of did a little graphic. I pulled all the people I'd identified on the process map and said, right, how many of them do we actually have in this meeting where we're talking about changing the process? Okay, we've got some gaps here, so we need to go out and identify more people, find them, bring them in so that they can co-develop this new process. And then my final reflection of what went well was really how little I had to do. I came with the learning from the LIM. I suggested things, I kind of prodded and pushed, but the people who do the work can make the improvements, and that is the ethos of LIM, and that was wonderful to see. Next slide, please. What would I do differently? So metrics is right in the center of this. I am someone that likes to move fast and break things and go, here's an improvement, let's go. And I should have stopped, slowed down, planned, thought about what my metrics were so that there would be more to show for it after the introduction of the improvement. And you can see Elmer there walking off into the future with Gemba walks and huddles as something that I have not been able to utilise yet, but that I will be taking forward with me into the future. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you very much, Fiona. Thank you for that. Great presentation, and actually 3 great presentations with lots of wonderful reflection on your own learning journeys, actually, as you've gone through this. So let's open it out for questions. Anybody want to come in with a question? James and then Jenny.
Thanks, guys. 3 brilliant presentations and really diverse topics, which just shows the kind of applicability of the Leeds improvement method across different teams and areas. Helen, it was really good to hear about the kind of the way that you motivated the new tissue viability nurses, and you talked also about the impact that this would have for staff kind of across critical care. And I just wondered how you had or were approaching kind of engaging with the wider team.
Hi, yeah. So we have monthly tissue viability meetings across the CSU, so across adult critical care, where the lead tissue viability nurses and the link nurses and champions are all involved. So that's always good to share ideas and learning. We have our unit tissue viability newsletters as well, which on our unit we now do bi-monthly, and again that can go across the whole CSU. Our quality team are really good as well within our CSU, so really collaborative across both sides of the city, St James's and the LGI. It's nice to have a good team who everyone's enthusiastic, so we all meet regularly now and share our learning, so it's really useful.
Great, thanks, Helen. Jenny?
They were brilliant. Well done, everybody. They were really good. I was also struck by the amount of personal reflection and learning that came through all 3. But I was also struck by, despite your last slide, which says, what would I have done differently? And your reflections on how, you know, Fiona, some of the things you would have liked to have done, but you didn't. all three have still made massive impact despite not absolutely everything being in place and there. And I wonder whether there's something for us just to take away from that, actually, because what you've achieved, there's always more we can do, isn't there? But what you've all managed to achieve has been superb. And I was really struck by Pam, your point about how much easier it was to write a compelling business case once it was data led, which I thought was brilliant. And I've got to say to Fiona, thank you. You've been an incredible GMTS colleague. You've been an absolute breath of fresh air and lots of energy and been vibrant within our team. And I look forward to seeing your career develop in the NHS.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jenny. Okay, so we've got a couple of minutes left. I can't see anyone else wanting to come in. So again, I think we can just thank Helen, Pam and Fiona. I think really great presentations, really inspiring to think about the work you've been doing and, as I said, the reflections. And thank you for sharing those. Well, for all of you, exciting times ahead in terms of some of the opportunities around crit care and the work that I know is going on to ensure that we're really getting better flow out of the crit care across as we try to recover our elective activity. And we're really grateful for the work you've been doing. And of course, this work, Helen, will really contribute to thinking about how we can provide that better care for patients in that context. Pam, as I said, just about poised with the new building, and I'm sure having worked in that reception down at the old medical school, you'll be very excited about the new environment you're going to go into. And Fiona, thank you for all the work you've been doing, and good luck in your next placement. I hope you find it as rewarding as you've had your time in LTHT, and who knows, we may well see you back here in the future. So thanks very much, everybody. That's the end of this week's report out. Thanks.